Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Ready, Set, Blow podcast, episode 123.
Wow, we're right back at it.
1, 2, 3, Chase. Right back at it. This is our second one this week that we're taping, and it's because we got a very, very special guest tonight, or this afternoon, I should say. None other than Tony V himself.
Hey.
A Boston legend.
I guess. Yeah, apparently. Legend that's out of breath from walking up 6 flights of stairs, but a legend nonetheless.
Every time.
Yeah.
I should have apologized to you. I should have let you have known that there was some steps.
Yeah, if you got an old school guy coming, you got to tell him there's stairs
Pop
involved.
that door open. He doesn't like the door shut.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, the dog's barking in the back. That's Reed making a guest appearance.
He's a good dog. That's a nice dog. Yeah.
Shut up.
I'm telling you, Reed just doesn't like me.
Is that what it is?
I think it's he doesn't like me.
I don't know why.
Sorry,
You're a very likable guy.
I'm a nice guy.
And you've done something that no other guest has been able to do.
Which is?
You got Chase to the podcast early.
Really?
Yes.
This is
He's been on time a couple of times. On time a couple of times.
I'm flattered.
But never early. But today you got him here early.
I am flattered that would happen.
He's excited for this one.
This is a good one.
Not only did I come early for you, Tony,
Yes.
I wore my Jordans, my Jordan sneakers that I've only worn twice.
Wow.
And then,
I am honored. I feel special.
I don't know if you know the history of Jordans and how it's
how important it is to the black community.
I know how big it is to the black community. Sure. It's the only reality that you people have that separates you from the fact that Larry Bird was the best basketball player that ever existed.
Yes. You know what? I'm with you on that. Larry Bird was terrific.
You can't deny what Jordan did for the game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just not only what a great basketball player, but what he did for the game.
Yeah.
He brought it someplace else.
Took it globally.
Yeah.
Did you see? I'm sorry.
No, so I was going to ask, like Larry Bird. So do you still think he was the best shooter now that you've seen Steph Curry? Because I think he was up until Steph Curry. I mean, clearly, I think he had the best shot.
Oh man, geez, that's a rough one. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to go. I'd like to see the accuracy. His stats about attempts and misses. But Steph Curry's the real deal too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I think though too that the way the game has changed since then in terms of how hard you could play defense in the '80s versus today when everything's a foul.
Oh my God!
That has to come into account with something in Larry Bird's stats.
Isn't that every sport in the world now? It's just. Baseball, you can't throw at anyone's head. Football, you can't be grabbing people by the face mask. What's the world coming to?
You can't bring a gun into a hockey game.
I would have to kind of give you
a bunch of wusses.
Oh man, yeah, we'll get into all that.
Right.
But I would have to give the edge to Larry as a body of overall to what he's done to the
body
game.
Of work. Yeah.
Just in terms of he was a good rebounder. He made everyone really good.
Yeah.
Not to say Steph doesn't, but I think
Bird
was he averaged almost
it
9 rebounds a game.
Yeah, it seems to me that Steph Curry never saw a pass he didn't want to make. You know what I mean? He's not all that free with the ball once he gets it.
And he's a much smaller player than Larry was.
Yeah.
So he couldn't go down low, which Larry could do surprisingly well.
Yeah.
That game, that Atlanta Hawks game, it's always on YouTube where he scored 60 something points.
Right.
And then the bench,
he didn't miss that night.
Even the visitors bench got up and cheered him on.
Right.
It's like which
never happened in the 80s. They weren't friends back then.
No. And as you say, it was a much more physical game back then too.
Yeah.
People getting beat up under the boards all the time, and now it's like, hey, the win from him running by me knocked me over. I want a penalty.
Oh yeah.
It's
well, that's what I say about Jordan too. People forget he was like a 3-time defensive player of the year because he led the league in steals for 6 different times. So he was an unbelievable player all around.
Yeah. What'd you think of the 80s, especially, obviously, I mean, this is, since we got you here, Tony.
And I lived through the 80s.
You lived through
it. But let's clarify that. Mm-hmm. I don't remember a whole lot of the 80s because I really lived the 80s.
You really enjoyed them.
I'm told, I'm going to have to take others' word for it, that I had a great time in the 80s.
You know what? That's so funny. That is true. Like a lot of people that will listen. You come from a cloth of people that everyone talks about until today. You yourself, guys like Lenny Clark and Steve Sweeney, those guys. But nonetheless, it's like every time younger comics talk about Boston comedy and how it was crazy back then and how how many shows you guys did back then, and it's like you guys kind of was like rock stars in a way.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
you know?
it really was like that for, there was a 5 or 6 year period where, I mean, we owned the city. You know what I mean?
Literally, yeah.
And I mean, and there were clubs it seemed like every 60 feet, and they were all full, and we would do multiple shows, sometimes on the same street in a night. 4, 5, 6 shows. I think Lenny holds the record at 9
in one night.
One night. You know, yeah.
Wow.
And I tell people this all the time. An old buddy of ours, Fran Solomita, made a movie called When Stand Up Stood Out, and if you want to know what that period of time was like, it captures it pretty well.
It does. I saw it.
Yeah.
I did see it. Actually, when I saw it, we have to see it together.
Yeah.
It's a great. It was a documentary, right?
It was a documentary.
I saw it years and years ago, but not since
Oh,
I've been
you did?
doing comedy,
Okay.
so I got to watch it again now that I'm in the game.
Yeah, this is how long ago it was, and what period it captured. There's a brief cameo of my son Gus in diapers.
Oh, wow.
In it, like he's
Yes.
running around while I'm getting interviewed.
Yeah.
And he's now 20 and doing stand up himself.
Yes.
So,
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
that's the span of time.
Wow.
So when did you get started? Let's go back to the beginning.
I got started in. It's again a lot of unclear.
What a great story already.
But I make it the spring, sometime in the spring of '82.
Okay.
81, 82,
Okay.
and the scene had been going for a little while before that. It started in like 79, 80. 81 when it really started going.
Still started going. Okay.
Yeah, that's when the Comedy Connection was on Warrenton Street, just down the other block from Nick's,
Yeah.
where Nick's Comedy Stop is now,
Yeah.
where the Blue Man Group is.
Yep.
That was the original Comedy Connection.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
On the street level, where Share Madness was downstairs and then
Yeah.
the theater was upstairs. But it started because there was a fellow by the name of Sean Maury, who's still going. But he was a street performer, Faneuil Hall, juggling and joking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then in the winter, he used to go down to Florida and warmer climes and do the same thing.
Yep.
And then one year he decided to stay around here, and he started teaching a comedy class at this space.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to travel that year. And then 2 guys that took that class eventually started the Comedy Connection in that very same room.
Wow.
How was that space performing?
It was
there?
great. It was, when you see what other clubs look like now, that's the model of it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Oh, the low ceiling, that's
low
the-
ceiling. Brick wall in the back,
Hmm.
and then eventually the mural of whatever town you're in.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
The seats right up close to the stage. Having
That's where it all started, huh? I had no idea, because it does work it's the best format, I feel like, for comedy.
I mean, when you see that, and that to me has always been the way, comedy's meant to be done.
Okay.
You can do arenas and you can do, theaters and stuff like that and become something else.
Which you have done.
Which I have done.
Yeah.
But for the pure art of what we do, that's the setting it should be done in. A very intimate, we're all in this together, so that you can touch the guy kind of feel.
That's very short. That's very. I like that. I like to hear that. That's good.
Do you remember what the first place you went up was? Was it Nick's or was it the Connection?
I believe my first open mic night was at the Comedy Connection.
Okay.
But the first time I ever saw comedy, or I'd been to a New York club once or twice, but the first time the Comedy Connection had gotten kicked out of their space over, some rent dispute or something for a while, and they went to a place called Tommy Mars, which was at the front of the alley where the Orpheum is.
Okay.
Or was. I don't even know if
Down
the
by
Orpheum-
Emerson.
Yeah, you're right. That same big block down around there.
Yeah.
There's a place called Tommy Mars, and they moved over there for a brief period of time, and then back into that Comedy Connection. So the first time I saw the crew of guys I would end up working with, Gavin, Lenny, Sweeney, Jimmy Smith, a couple others, Mike Donovan, Mike McDonald, were all there at this place called Tommy Mars, which was the Comedy Connection at the time.
And how old were you when you got started?
I was late. I was in my mid-20s when I got started.
Late. Jeez, I started in my early 30s. I'm fucking really late.
Well, I mean...
Tell me about it, Randy.
Yeah,
right?
I mean... back then it was. I mean, because, I was working, some guys had a couple of years on me or whatever, but I had a whole nother career before I decided
to get into
to try stand-up. And
Yeah.
it was only meant to wasn't meant to be my career. I was something I wanted to try because I'd always been interested in it from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So initially you went into it not thinking this was going to be something.
Not that it was going to be my career. I was a social worker and had, I got a degree and I was working toward my master's, and I had this whole
legitimate human.
Yeah. Well, it's such as it was. Yeah. And then you find this group of people, and you go like, "Oh, no, this is where I belong."
Yeah. Was it right away?
Yeah.
Where you're like, "This is immediate. Like this is what I should be doing."
It was pretty right away. I was not. Welcomed into the fold immediately. You had to prove yourself,
which is
on and off stage.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
You had to be, because you got to remember it was all like young white guys at that time. There were very few people of color, and very few women. Women were not welcome. I mean, not by us. There were a couple.
Yeah.
Lauren Dombrowski at the time, a friend of mine, Ann St. Ange. Paula Poundstone actually started here and was basically chased out of Boston.
Wow.
And let me say this: anybody back then who got chased out of Boston went on to do great things. You know what I mean?
I'm sure there's
right. The rest of us got left behind because we defended this little niche that we thought was so important. But
that's interesting.
It turns out it kind of was, though, wasn't it? I mean, if you think back now, looking back, it seems to be the seat of a lot of the guys that are doing arena shows now. I mean, came up after you guys, the Joe Rogans and Bill Burrs.
Sure, I maintain there's probably a half a dozen guys doing arenas and stuff now that I probably brought on stage for the first time.
Yeah.
I know for a fact I put Rosie O'Donnell on stage for her very first time.
She did spend some time here.
Yeah, she came in and bullied her way into the Comedy Connection with this cockamamie story that she was a working comic from New York, and the manager bought it, and I was hosting, and said, "Put this woman on next," and then she was off and running.
That's interesting. Your name seems to always come up in like conversations, like you said, like guys like like Joe Rogan and like Bill Burr,
right?
Those guys.
That's mostly because I'm not a dick. You know what I mean?
The off-stage stuff,
right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. On and off stage, a lot of my peers didn't have time for younger guys, and I always look at it this way. That those are the guys coming up behind, and they're me, 25, 30 years ago, and if nobody took me under their wing, I wouldn't have stayed with it, so unless you're an asshole to me, I'll cut you a lot of slack, and if I see something in you, I'll try to foster it. I'll bring people along or make suggestions.
That's great. It's interesting that you brought up that point because like you are one of those guys, especially for in the Boston comedy scene specifically, that you're one of these guys that've been doing it for a long time, and you still are connected to the younger guys. You always are around shows. You pop up at shows like some of these like you always like
put on shows with the open mic over at the Bringer at Laugh.
Laugh.
And a lot of like your peers, like I'm just saying like we don't see them like as much as we see you.
No, they do what they do.
Yeah, you come out to the open mic still.
Listen, I'm trying to stay in the business 6 more months, and I believe if I go to the comedy studio and make young people laugh, I go, I can be in the business another year. You know what I mean? And I still love working at my craft. I think a lot of people, think you get an act and that's it. I think you're only as good as your last bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as long as I can stand and talk and my last bit is the funniest thing I wrote, then I'll be happy.
You'll be happy.
Yeah, no matter what happens with it,
Yeah.
Now, how long after you started did you start headlining and making some real money so you can get out of the social work game?
It took me about 2 years to start working regular. But you have to again understand there weren't that many of us. Yeah. And this is owed to geography as much as anything else, because when the boom happened, being in New England in any direction but east, in an hour you're in another state. You know what I mean? So New Hampshire had shows, Vermont had shows, Connecticut. We used to drive to New Haven, Connecticut on a Wednesday night and be back for Last Call that played again Sam's, which was over on Com Ave, which was, another club.
Yeah.
So you'd go down, do a show, and you'd make Last Call, back home.
That was Barry Katz's spot, right?
Barry Katz ran that, yeah. And so all of that, and then Connecticut seemed to be the wall, if you will, between us and New York.
New York.
You know what I mean? Because New York comics came to Boston and we tortured them. If you were from anywhere else, we really did. It was like a badge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we hated. It's like I don't know. It's like one of those
competitive nature, more or less.
Yeah,
or was it more,
because we thought that this is how small-minded we were. That we thought we were protecting our little thing, and that this invading horde from New York were coming in, to show us how good they were. But we sent more headliners than I care to think. Away from here crying, literally in tears.
Just from being mean to them off stage, or just blowing them off the
stage.
Yeah,
and we would do that. They would, they'd come into headliner weekend when they started trying that. We thought, well, fuck that. We're not going to let these guys take our
one of you guys
money.
feature.
You're right. So they would, they'd show up at Nick's, right, and the show would be Don Gavin, Steve Sweeney, Kenny Rogerson, me, and then Howie Mandel would try to go on, and put a rubber thing on his head. We'd go, not around here, my friend.
The room would just be spent.
Right. And more oftentimes than not, if they'd come in on a Thursday, by Friday late show, they'd go, you know what, I'm going to host the show, and we'll just introduce you guys.
Wow.
And that's how they saved their skin.
There's been plenty of stories of guys like that that stated that.
Right.
Yeah.
Richard Lewis in the back of Nick's, literally weeping.
Oh my God!
How can I follow this? This is and it was
you can't.
You can't.
That was the point,
right? That's it.
What is it that to kind of shed light on that? What is it you think that why Boston comics are so good? People say, why is it that?
Especially from that era. Like, what made you guys so dynamic? Yeah.
Well, I tell you exactly what it was, because it was new, right? And the audiences grew with us. And it wasn't like, people coming in shirts and ties looking for dinner theater, or they were going to see a crooner and then a comic and then, a dance team. It was just pure stand-up comedy, right?
Yeah.
And there were no clubs. So the audiences we were talking to us. And the audiences were as loud and as boisterous as they could be, And so we had to up it a notch, just to compete with the audience and what they expected.
Sure.
And the fact that, a couple of guys who were popular around here at the time were pretty aggressive. They had that Boston working class guy mentality. Mm-hmm. And that's the audience that we
attracted.
Yeah.
I see, yeah.
So it was more of doing battle with the audience than, people coming in for an experience.
Okay.
We were sort of all in it together.
Do you think that the younger guys kind of followed suit? Like when I say the younger guys, the guys behind you.
Yeah, I think they saw. I think like anything, people see something and think like, oh, I gotta up that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To break through, I gotta go on next level with that. And then look, and then I'll take it the other way. There was Stephen Wright, who was completely the opposite. You know what I mean? The polar opposite of, the deadpan one-liner kind of guy who really broke through the noise.
Yeah.
And then Bobcat Goldthwait came through with, and then character work, started to become the vogue, and screaming and, whatever it was. And that was his way of taking, like what Lenny and Gav and Sweeney and others did, to another level.
So what years were like the big years that everyone talks about?
I would say like 83 to 87, something like that. That's when it was probably its peak. I think the Ding Ho, which is in Cambridge, closed in 86.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the time there was and Nick started because of the overflow from the Comedy Connection.
Okay,
that was just a good business decision on their part, because the Comedy Connection didn't have a lounge, and they'd be selling out 2-3 shows on a Saturday night. So they would go, look, we don't have a place for you to go, but here's your ticket. Why don't you go down the street to Nick's and have a drink and then come back for the 9:30 show or whatever it was, right? Yeah. And then Nick saw all these people coming in and smartly said, well, why we got all these people in here? Why are we letting them go back up there? Why don't we
grab
just
a guy and give them
grab a guy? So, sometimes you'd be on stage at the Comedy Connection and someone would go, hey, when you're done here, run down the Knicks and do a set. And you'd just go back and forth. And for a time there was, this was a very brief time, but this was absolutely true, that within, I would say, 600 feet, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clubs.
Wow.
There was the Comedy Connection, Nick's at the other end of the street.
Yeah.
Through the transportation building was the Vault.
Comedy Vault.
The Comedy Vault, which was there for a long time.
Yeah.
Across the street was a place called Joker's, and then Duck Soup was across the street from that.
And Catch a Rising Star, where did that fall into?
And Catch had 2 iterations. One didn't last long at all. But the first was over at a place which was Jonathan Swift's at the time.
Okay.
And then it became Catch a Rising Star bought it.
I see.
So, and that's what morphed into the Comedy Studio. Okay. So there was a club called Jonathan Swift's. I actually opened for Buddy Rich at this place, years ago, and they would do comedy periodically, and then that became Catch a Rising Star. Then Catch a Rising Star left that space and briefly started in the Hong Kong, and then that didn't work.
Yeah,
it became the Comedy Studio.
Okay.
And so that was that lineage. That was like an offshoot. And then they tried a club. They tried to open a club in Central Square. I mean, there were clubs literally everywhere. Stitches on Com Ave in the front of the Paradise. And then they moved over to just down the street from Play It Again Sam's, and Play It Again Sam's, which was up on Com Ave.
Yeah. Do you think again, I think initially my question was like back before, like the comics that came out of Boston, like, I guess, why is it that they do so well when they leave out of here? You know what I mean? Like when they
because
leave.
You're ready for anything. I mean, when you go see how civilized the rest of the country is, you know what I mean? You go like, this is a snap. This is going to be a brick. You don't understand. We would do shows, like you'd walk in the door and there would be like signs, no colors.
Oh, my God.
You know what I mean? Like, but we'd do biker bars, strip clubs.
You would actually experience that. You saw that. You witnessed that.
I witnessed it. I did it.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a lie. Any bar that had an off Tuesday or Wednesday night would at the time would try comedy. We used to do a show. I've told this story. I don't know if I've done it on podcasts or whatever, but we used to do a show at a place called the Charlie Horse, which was in Kingston, Massachusetts, and it ran for something like 8 or 9 years. And there was never once a good show in that room. Not one. I one time got heckled by more people that were at the show. I had someone come in from the pool room to tell me I sucked, and then go back and take a shot.
Hey, corner 8 pocket.
Yeah. Hey, Eddie, it's your shot. I'll be right there. You suck.
Corner 8 pocket.
Right. And I mean, and that's 100% true. This place had, like I said, it ran for 8 or 9 years. They had a mic that came from the DJ booth, but it didn't have enough cord for it to hit the ground. So it was like you were talking into a clothesline. Like it came directly out of the, and you couldn't. You had it was like having a tightrope rope right in front of you.
I love it, and it ran for 8 or 9 years.
And it ran for 8 or 9 years.
With the
and we
mics
would
in.
say, and they'd go, "Is there anything we could do, to make this better?" I go, "Yeah, get a fucking longer mic cord. Let's start there." And never They never change.
You gotta have people duck as you move around stage.
Like if somebody had a plan, it would like be. If you walked across stage, you'd have to do the limbo. Yeah,
there's something interesting about how comics will still show up to a bad show.
Paid,
if there's a
paid gig, man. Do your time. This is the thing I tell people. Sometimes it would be horrendous, and you'd go. I get paid to do 20 minutes, and I'm going to talk for 20 minutes.
That's it.
You know what I mean? And look, these are the stories that you like telling that gets a laugh. There were good there were good places too, and people like comedy and stuff like that. But it wasn't always the norm. It was because it wasn't like people going, "Oh, Tony V's here." It was like chicken wings, 10 cents, and comedy.
Yeah, and somebody starts talking in the middle of your meal.
Right. Hey, we're trying to play cards over here.
Right. Right, so you have to fight through that. You
having the fights of, hey, you guys going to turn the TVs off?
Yeah,
no.
Caesar on. Go fuck yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Especially in the 80s where
sports were crazy. I mean, it was nuts, but that's what we did. And you go, what is wrong? I mean, why would you put yourself through that?
Did anyone ever come up to you and be like, "Hey, Tony, I think you need to just like relax or to take it easy or just take a break or something?"
Well, look, I've been told, no less than 100 times to get out of the business by several thousand people.
I feel it's a common comedy thing. I feel like if you haven't been told that, then you haven't been doing it long enough. Like I feel like somebody all along, hey, quit this whole shit.
I one time had a review that said, to be a comedian, you need 3 things: stage presence, material, and timing. Tony V has none of these. Yeah.
And 30 years later, here you are.
Yeah, and you go, all right, I guess I got some work to do. But then you remember too, there were no comedy critics at the time. It was they'd send the dance critic over to talk about a show, or the theater critic would come in, and they had no idea what we were doing.
That's interesting how you said there was no critics.
Yeah,
specifically comedy, because it was a new art form.
Comedy, right? And then generally what happened was whoever was in charge of rock and roll became the comedy guy, critics.
And then there was enough failed comics to be critics after that.
Yeah, right. Failed comics went on to do that, right? But I got a good buddy for years, Dean Johnson, who used to write for the Herald. He became the comedy critic, and he was as instrumental in creating the scene as much as we were, because he would write, as positively as he could about
crazy
every
underground
show.
shows all over the place.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And he was very good at it. And Steve Morse, who was also with the Globe, also very instrumental in doing it, switching over to being the comedy guy. And a lot of the jocks at the time, the radio jocks at the time, a guy by the name of Mark Parento, who was with BCN for years, used to have us on, the 5 o'clock funnies, and would promote all the shows, and did the, Comedy Riot with the radio station sponsoring it. So it created this buzz of excitement.
I want to touch on something real quick, not to get off topic so much. You said something about back then there wasn't that many diverse comics,
right?
Black comics doing it at that time. Back then in the 80s, were there black comics or whatever? They just were doing other rooms in other places, or was there any rooms for them to?
No, not that I'm aware of. I said, I think it was just I think it was just the demographics of Boston too at the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I'm not saying there were none.
Sure.
You know what I mean, but. And somehow we got the reputation of not welcoming. But I've never met, a group of guys who we didn't care, who you were.
Exactly.
If you were funny, man, that's all that counted. And if you could hang with us after the show, that was even, more of a bonus. So what happened was, people would start coming in to town because we were making a living.
Well, it was the only scene where you could make a living in town,
Just about. Us in San Francisco were the only place, because New York at the time they'd give you $10 a set, but the carrot was always you're going to be seen and become a star, or go on to a sitcom or something like that.
Right.
But we were between clubs, corporate, colleges. We were making working man's living.
Yeah, good coin.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And most of it was in cash.
Which you didn't report.
Well,
you did.
They caught up with us.
Oh, no.
Eventually, they did. We did, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it became a very legitimate business, which I think ruins everything. But we, Sinbad.
Oh,
great
so good.
I know. Yeah, very well. Yeah.
He came into town and couldn't believe what he fell into. You know what I mean? Like how welcoming we were. And we've remained friendly for 30 years because of it. I think when the first time he came in, he might have been AWOL.
That's how he started.
Yeah, he just walked away from the service, and he was with his brother, who's a nice guy. And he goes, "Hey, my brother's trying to do stand up." We go, "Yeah, come on in."
Do your thing.
Yeah, do whatever you did. And then, he did something at the Comedy Connection, and I called somebody and said, "Yeah, you got to see this guy." So then he was on at Nick's and then Stitches, and, and he stayed in town for 2 or 3 weeks and made a bunch of money, enough to, go, try New York,
Wow, I never heard of that.
Yeah, that's just
I heard he'd gone AWOL, but I didn't know he was up here after that to make
I think it was, if not like his first stop, but certainly
up on the list,
right up on the list.
Now, did you do the road at all during the 80s or afterward?
I didn't. I shied away from the road. I mean, I did my time on the road, but look, the Deep South and I don't get along. It's my only prejudice in the world.
Okay.
If I hear a Southern accent, I automatically assume you're a fucking idiot. I don't care.
It's a universal thing.
Yeah, I don't care if you hold the key to cancer. You're not getting 3 sentences past me. Right? Just go, this guy, I can't do it.
Which is ironic because you hear the Boston accent up here, and it's like, well,
Yeah, believe me, I'm not saying I'm right.
No, yeah.
It's just something that you feel.
Yeah. But, I did, a few of the road gigs and the comedy condos with people you don't know and stuff like that. But then we were fortunate. I was fortunate where, there was enough work around here. And then I would go to Vegas. I'd go to Atlantic City.
Nice.
You know what I mean? I'd go to places. I'd periodically go to Florida to do like private shows and stuff like that. But, I mean, there were, I did Chicago, like the Chicago one-nighters for a brief period of time. Yeah. But it held there was no romanticism to it.
Yeah.
I just hated every minute of it. And I was tired of dumb conversations with, I remember being in a condo with a guy who didn't know what a bagel was. He literally did not know what a bagel. I go, I'd like to find a bagel somewhere, and he goes, "What's a bagel?" And I go, "Oh man, this has got to end." So and then here's another thing that happened, that kept me off the road a little bit. I got commercials early on, doing stuff like that. I had the American Tourist, the gorilla thing. There was a gorilla that was the spokesperson for American Tourister luggage.
Okay.
And
okay, you got it.
You were the gorilla?
I was the gorilla for 4 years.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a good gig. Sounds like
it's a sweet gig. Bought my house. And
wow.
And so then they would put me on the road to do these appearances, and I would get up on stage, I'd go, "Hey, I'm the gorilla, blah, blah, blah." We had a PR
had to
team.
say that, Tony?
No, that
For
was
fucking money, I'd say I'm anything. I'll say I'm a woman for $5.
Right. I'd go, "Well, I'm the American Tourist, the luggage gorilla," and I do stand up, and I go, and people invite me in on a open mic or a showcase night, and then they'd see what I could do, and then I'd get a weekend there. And I'd go to Chicago periodically. Zanies was always a great club.
Yeah.
But those one-nighters, there were literally people who didn't have homes. They would just go from gig to gig to gig, and you could make a living doing it, but, it was not fun.
So I guess you would say you believe in the theory of, you do your gig, the current gig, to set up your next gig.
Yes. Yeah, that you should always, it's a hustle. Our business is a hustle from day one. On the outside, it looks like you're working 40 minutes a night. But the other 23 hours and 20 minutes, you're looking for your next gig.
and writing material for it.
And writing for material and keeping, that, and that's the other thing, working, geographically in the same place, sort of, is, I have to keep writing or it gets old really quick.
Yeah.
People who travel, you could do the same act word for word anywhere in the country and you'd be fine for 15 years.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but if you stay in one place and people know I'm going to be at Giggle, say, or wherever, they want to hear at least partly new stuff when they come back, if they come back.
That's true, right? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like music. People will listen to the same song over and over because, it reminds them of something. But
I said that before. Playing the hits must be nice.
Yeah, right.
No one asks a comedian to play their hits.
No,
no one gives a shit
once
about
in a
your last
while.
joke.
Yeah, no. We heard it. That. I one time had a guy come back like a week later and get bummed out that I was doing the same joke from the week before. I go, dude, I don't know what you were expecting. I go, you go into work every day. You don't grab a new job every day, do you?
It's true.
Right?
That's a testament to your performance. It means you made it sound like you wrote it right there on stage.
Yeah, well, listen, that's the thing I tell people. It's as much as an acting gig as anything else stand-up. It's the illusion of spontaneity.
Oh, wow.
Is what sells a joke.
I see.
If you tell a joke like this is the 400th time you've done it and you're tired of it, the audience isn't going to buy it.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's as much of a performance, or you're feeling shitty, or you had a fight, or your foot hurts, or something like that. You still got to go up and sell it every night. Every night you're there.
That's
because the audience will know when it's not genuine.
They read on it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
If you're reading your grocery list in your head while you're telling a joke, they're going to know it.
It's funny, yeah. I feel like you put people in a mob and they lose some intelligence points, but they can certainly smell fear on you real quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Like they might be dumb as a box of rocks, but they know if you're intimidated, they can smell it.
And once they smell fear, look out.
Yeah.
It's over. You lose. There's 150 of them and you. And there's something about a comic eating it. And I got to admit this, I get a kick out of watching someone else eating it as much as anybody else.
Oh, we were having a good laugh last night in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah. I like a train wreck more than anybody else in the whole world. It's one of my flaws. But that being said, you try to have it not be you.
That's what out of the episode. You love it, but you try to have it not be you.
Yeah. That's, and we've all had it. I mean, we all have those horrible gigs, and where you just can't buy a laugh, or the flop sweat is happening. So what can I tell you? Anytime a comic is on stage going, so what else can I tell you?
What else?
I go, oh boy, this ain't going well.
So I guess you would say, bombing is a key variable.
Oh, you got to eat it to get better.
Yeah.
Because if you're rewarded every time you go out, what are you learning? Emo Phillips told me that early on. A great guy, one of the most prolific joke writers on the planet too.
Yeah.
And he said to me way early on, like, look, you learn more from your failure than you do your successes, and it's absolutely true. Because why would you fix something that you're getting rewarded for?
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many shitty comedians. You know what I mean? Nobody goes, listen, man, that sucks. But, and it's not the audience's job to tell them. The audience just reacts.
They react, right?
They react. It's not their job to let you know what you're doing is either good or hacky or bad, or they're just reacting. It's their night out.
Yeah.
It's up to you to police yourself. And if you get rewarded for that constantly, you're not going to change anything.
Yeah, that kind of gets into something that we talk about periodically. It's obviously popular now to talk about, but we obviously want to get your perspective, given you've been doing a hell of a lot longer than we have. What do you think about what's going on with sort of policing of comics and what they say, particularly when they're working out new bits, and not only policing by the crowd, but more importantly by other comics? Sort of saying you can't say that, or that's not right, or this, you're not allowed to say this.
Are you talking specifically about thievery, or just
no? I'm talking about censorship and saying oh, that's off topic. You can't talk about that kind of a thing.
Nobody gets to tell you what to talk about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can find a way to make it funny, then I will listen to it. As long as it's from the heart for me. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those guys, although I don't work particularly dirty or like that. I don't care what you do on stage. If you can convince me that you think it's funny and can make it funny, then I think it's as legitimate as anything else. And I don't think there's anything should not be off topic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You should be able to talk about if you can find cancer funny, you go right ahead. If you can find death funny, I'm for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a touchy thing because people are very sensitive now to that. So it's what you can tolerate and how you can do it.
Are there places you won't do because they're too sensitive? Like I know some colleges are particularly sensitive these days. I don't know if you still do colleges and whatnot.
I don't do college. I mean, look, it's not only like I'm their father now. It's like I'm their grandfather. You know what I mean? I have nothing to say to these kids. You know what I mean? You got to realize your limitations.
I disagree.
Yeah. I mean, if something came along, I certainly would, but I don't pursue it per se. But colleges are rough that way because they're very sensitive about stuff now. Or you'll go in and if you accept a gig, this is what I love. They'll go, we'd love to have you, but you can't say anything about gays. You can't say anything about abortion. You can't say anything, about women. You can't say anything transgender. You can't say anything. I go, you need a mime. Is what you need. You ever thought of a juggler? Jugglers are funny. You know what I mean? I mean because a joke generally has a target.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It seems like these college. I'm not speaking. I don't know. I never did a college gig, but I'm just saying. It seems like they're sheltering these kids for some, like, instead of trying to show them like there's other things in the world that you can like kind of whatever.
What's wrong with making up your own mind?
You know
what I mean?
That's the most simplest way to put it.
Yeah, right. You always have the ability to walk out of a place, and the person would know that you didn't like what they were doing, and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not for hate speech. I don't think you can go in and start a
Klan rally or whatever.
Klan rally or a Nazi meeting. You know what I mean, and have that be okay. But it's not funny. I always go back. People always bring up the Michael Richards incident.
Sure.
As like the beginning of what you can't say anything on stage.
Ah, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? Okay. That seems to be like the place where people started.
Yeah, well, that was the first time somebody recorded with a phone.
On a phone, that's why. Right? And it went viral. It went viral quickly.
Sure.
So blah blah blah.
It was on YouTube. That's why. It's
and I maintain his only crime was that it wasn't funny. Right. That's what I maintain. That came from a place of anger, and not from a place of like you just fucked with my set.
Not funny.
So I'm gonna come back at you.
Yeah.
He dropped the whole guard of being funny and just went angry.
Yeah.
And that's what the crime was. If he could have got a laugh out of anything he said,
he did it.
He would have been fine.
He'd been fine. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there are different situations where you get to defend yourself.
Yeah.
It was funny, yeah. So I think Chappelle had like a famous rebuttal to that. Like,
right.
When he went up, he was on stage. Like, he goes, 70% of me was like, Kramer, I don't know about that. But he's like, the other side of me was the comedian side. Like, don't let him break you, Kramer.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's it. And you get to defend yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've had this discussion with my son, who's starting out in the business and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And this is the thing, this boils down the whole problem with the world. It's much more acceptable in this culture to be an asshole than to call someone an asshole.
Yeah. Wow.
You know what I mean? That's the fundamental problem in the world. Someone can go off and ruin your show, and you call them an asshole, and they go, hey, watch the language. You go like, no. Why does he get to act like that, and I don't get to call him on
That's the best. I'm going to quote that. I love that.
And I believe that is at the heart of what the problem with our culture is.
And comedians get the most blunt of it.
And the comedians do get the...
Well, because they put themselves in that position.
Right, because you're asking for it. No one's making you go... Look, also, there's something wrong with every one of us who wants to do this.
You
know what I mean? That whole seeking approval from strangers night after night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look, if you want to get, I told you I come from a psychology background, so it's not like I don't have that fight with myself, every night.
I see.
But it's, once you come to terms with that and you go, well, no, it's my job. That's that part of me, and this is this part of me. That's a decision I made years ago, that I was going to have a life and pursue what I loved.
Yeah,
it seems like I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just the conversation reminds. It also kind of reminds me of what Donnell said to us. Donnell Rawlings, who we've had on the podcast a couple times, said to us like a year and a half ago. He's like, the stage will teach you everything you need to know. He's like, don't worry if someone else doesn't tell you if it's not funny. If the crowd doesn't laugh, you're going to bomb. You'll never do it again.
Right. You'll know it's not funny.
You don't need someone to criticize you after the show. If they don't laugh, you will not say it anymore.
Right,
that's it.
Right. Yeah, right. I've got all the feedback I need, which was silence.
I already want to kill myself in the silence.
Right.
I don't need you telling me I sucked after the fact.
Yeah. Listen, here's the other thing. This is the first piece of advice I give anybody who wants any. Don't listen to a fucking soul. Don't listen to anything anybody says to you.
I see.
You know what I mean? I mean, if they're going to try to help you with a bit or something like that.
Yeah.
But don't let anybody tell, you know what you got to do? You got to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
No, I got to do what I got to do, and you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it takes longer than you want. We all want immediate gratification for it, but you got to stick to who you are, or it's going to come off completely false, and it's going to take you way longer to get where you're going.
Right. Because sometimes some comics, they actually end up finding themselves, their true selves, through comedy.
Right.
Over time too. Right.
That's what you should be looking. If you're in the business 3 months or 30 years, it should always be that journey. It should be somewhere on that arc of your journey as a comic, to discover something new every night,
right,
or every time you're on stage.
Right.
The thing that hurts me the most when I see a comic work is when they piss away their time on stage with frivolousness or something, or some rant about their day that has nothing to do with comedy. When I go, look, there's 10 people standing in this room
that want to hear
that would kill. But want to hear something, but also would kill to take your time to do your spot. And do something good with it. Don't fucking piss it away because you're in a mood or
come prepared.
Right. What else can I tell you? This isn't funny, but and the worst thing is fucking notes on stage. When I see people reading, from a note on stage, I just go, oh man, that is the worst.
Oh, okay. That's your pet peeve.
That's my pet. You got 5 minutes on stage. If you haven't had a half hour to learn what's on in that 5 minutes, then you don't belong on a stage. It's so disrespectful.
Okay.
And then it also gives you I guess I won't do that one again and pretend to cross it off. When you know what I mean? That's just bullshit. That irks me. Unless there's a show designed for that.
That's predicated.
New material show,
it's
whatever,
new material show or notebook night or whatever. Fine.
Yeah.
But to show up at a show, and it's, more established people do. They'll go to a small club or an open mic with their notebook out, and it just pisses me off to no end.
Because they're not giving it all their all.
Right. They're just reading something that's half-assed and trying to figure it out instead of looking at it before. If you can't remember, 6 bullet points for a 5 or 6 minute set, then you don't belong in the business.
There it is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's just jerking off on stage. That's all that is. And although there are some people who would pay to see that, it's not my particular thing.
Yeah. So you didn't take notes onto the stage at the Garden?
No, I did not. No, I did not.
We're not going to let you get out of here without asking about that.
The TD Garden.
The TD Garden, yeah. No, when I opened for Bill Burr. But I have to say this. There was, about a minute or two in, I started ad-libbing. Like, I had my set prepared, of course, and I started ad-libbing about walking over to the Garden, and it was working. And in the back of my head, I'm going, the balls on you, the sheer balls on you to be opening for a national act in front of thousands of people, and you decide to wing it.
True stand-up,
right? But that's the. I wonder if I can get away with this.
What was that experience like? Was it just overwhelming?
It was great. I got one of the best compliments that I ever gotten. Like as an adult comedian in my life after the show from one of Bill's people.
Okay.
He goes, I don't know how you did this, but you turned the Boston Garden into a comedy club.
Wow.
And I went like, yeah. I mean, because a lot of people, like I couldn't go out there and out Bill Burr.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody could. He's got that, a style. So to me, it as the opening act, it was to make the audience a crowd and to bring them into my sphere, into my world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I really felt like I successfully did that. I picked what I wanted to do. This, my set had an arc, and it worked. It built. I think one of the things that people do that don't pay attention to, and especially in big situations like that, is timing and the pause. People are afraid of a pause.
Sitting in the silence.
Yes, the silence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in order for a crowd to get it, they got to understand it. So sometimes they need a second and a half.
That's very.
And if you fill that with patter or something else, you're going to go over the laugh.
Naturally, you can get uncomfortable with that for most people.
That's what I'm saying. Most people, when they get in a nervy situation, go faster and think like, I got to get everything out.
Yeah.
Wrong way.
Sit in silence.
Let them come to you. Whatever your cadence is, whatever your delivery is, let the audience understand it and get it, and they will come along. Like there's a couple guys, and I will not name them.
Sure.
But I see people do 40-minute sets. I see people do 20-minute sets, and I see people do 10-minute sets in different, shows.
Yeah.
And there's about a half a dozen guys I know who all three of those sets are exactly the same. I don't know what kind of magic happens, but they say the same amount of shit in 10 minutes as they do in 20 minutes and 40 minutes.
Okay.
And I go, one of those sets is suffering somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're either saying something too fast or something too slow or something, just not right.
Right.
And I think how you say stuff is as important as what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it should be completely unique to you.
Okay, I agree.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And that's what makes a good comic. Not, I see Chase Abel, and I'm going to be just like Chase Abel, so I adopt your mannerisms, and I start talking like you, and I start, you know what I mean? It's like I see Chase Abel, and I go like, I like this about that. I like this about that. And then I make it
yours.
Mine.
Make it yours. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Especially as when you're starting in comedy, it's kind of like it's sometimes people when they first start out, they easily gravitate towards a comic that they like and they try to do that thing.
That happens all the time. I'm
you
sure.
can see, our lineage, from Lenny Clark on to the people who do Lenny Clark still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Lenny was the typical Boston comedian and what everyone thought, and then everyone else did some, for a lot of people did versions of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's still being done. It's still being done to this day. But, the thing is to be as original as you can or as you can to make it work.
I believe that. Yeah.
So the guys coming up after you, like Bill Burr and did you know when you met him, this guy's going to be fucking in arenas one day or what?
You can't ever tell what people are gonna be because they gotta go through it. But you see something in people that you go, this guy's special, and he's got it. He's got the heart. He's got the drive, and he's got the brain for it. You know what I mean?
The next gear.
Next gear, right?
Yeah.
So he claims, and this is the reason I think we've stayed buddies as long as we have, that the best piece of advice he ever got was from me, which was get out of Boston.
I love how Tony says he claims.
Right.
That's a pretty, yeah.
You know,
It was the 80s, I remember.
Right. Don't get stuck here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's something more to you than, you know, what we're doing here.
I see.
You know what I mean? And we all took our shot at it, and you know, some of it works, some of it doesn't. And, you know, at some point you make a decision where you're going to live and how you're going to live your life and stuff like that. And you either chase it or you don't. But you don't want to, especially when you're young, get stuck in a place that you can only go so far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I do. Yeah.
Would that be a big piece of advice you give to all comics?
Yeah, all comics. Yeah. Go see what it's like other places, especially when you're young. You know, look, the road, as I said, you're not going to learn anything, you know, doing one-nighters in Indiana or Ohio. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Believe me. If you want to make a living that way, I don't even know if that can still be done. But go see what it's like in New York. You know, spend a month there and go to shows and before you dip your toes in and see what it's like. Go to L.A. and see how much you'll fucking hate it. You know, you can't hate something that you've not seen. You know what I mean? But go see how awful it is.
But Boston people are like that, though, for sure. We hate things we don't even know about.
Right. I heard from a cousin.
Go find out how much you hate it.
I've heard from a cousin of an uncle of a friend of mine that L.A. is a terrible place. So I hate it. Yeah. But go see. I mean, you know, I've done my time in both places, and you know, when you're out in L.A. and you're working, everything's going great, and when you're not, you know.
You want to die.
You want to die, right. And people are awful, and they care about shit. You know, look, the third time someone said, I'm bringing my dog to a psychiatrist, and you don't go, what the fuck is wrong with you? They got you. You've lost. You've lost. They sucked you right in.
Right.
Or you go, I got to get the hell out of here.
I'm sorry. So how much do you think that knowing the actual business of comedy is just as significant as performing to kind of get you to...
You got to know the business.
Yeah.
Look, if you're looking for stable, upright citizens, you know, this is not the business. It's why you should have a good group of friends and a family life if you have one, because you're never going to get the emotional needs you are looking for from the people who run this business. If they can make a buck off of someone doing your act, you know, if someone's doing your act and they can get it for $100 cheaper a week, they'll do it. They don't give a fuck what you know, blah blah blah. It's not up to them.
Because these people just sell art.
Yeah,
they don't make.
They don't make it. Right, and they only know about asses and seats and how many drinks they're selling.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the clubs, and please don't look to show business in general. Anything that's ever made it on TV, you know, on the networks especially, made it by mistake. It's not because someone had a grand vision. And it's mostly because the artists themselves stuck to their guns and didn't let things get watered down.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
I agree with that.
Comedy by committee is the worst thing that could possibly happen. It should be one person's vision, and you should have people who believe in that vision or at least want to help you make that vision.
Help you make that vision.
Right. Not like, hey, that's a great idea. What, instead of having a girlfriend, you had an imaginary bear as a friend. And instead of it being, you know, a doctor, it's a plumber. So you got an imaginary bear friend that's a plumber instead of a girlfriend. And you go, no, that's not that's not.
We were just talking about this, Randy, yesterday, about compromising.
Your integrity for a paycheck.
How much is it worth?
Yeah.
You know, what's your soul worth? You know, Lenny Bruce used to say that. You know, and by the way, you know, Lenny Bruce is the reason we get to do what we're doing.
Sure.
Went to prison for it.
Yeah, he died for it.
Yeah.
They hounded that man to death so we could speak our minds. You know what I mean? And anybody who doesn't realize that in our business should go fuck themselves in a royal way.
Yeah.
You know, no matter who you look up to as a comedian.
Because they pay the ultimate price.
He paid the ultimate price.
And there's many people in parallel situations, other situations they've done that too.
Sure. Folded or you know, gave in and you know, blah blah blah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying be a martyr to a ridiculous cause, but you know, he fought the fight. He fought the fight that you know led to what we became.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people are still doing his bits to this day without knowing of it. You know, that he was so prolific and so...
Lenny Bruce, yeah.
And so, I mean, if any of your audience doesn't know who he is, they should be ashamed of themselves, and then they should go look him up.
Look him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
he's Lenny was right 50, 40, late 40s?
50s into
50s,
60s. Yeah, he died in late 60s.
Predated Carlin
and stuff.
and Pryor.
Pryor, yeah. And Pryor gives him a lot of props, too.
Yeah, as Carlin does well.
Because if you see Carlin's early stuff, you know, he was doing the hippy-dippy weatherman and wearing suits and towing the line. And then when Lenny died,
the 7 words you can't say on stage.
Yeah, that's when that all that all happened.
You said something like kind of cool, like we were just talking about like the compromising thing and making sure you stick to what you believe in and don't try to compromise that. You know? And I've always thought of you when I first met you. This was many years ago, like probably 6 years when I first started doing comedy. You're kind of one of those people that I'm gonna say this like not because you're just here. I'm just saying like I pay attention to certain groups of people. You always are the same person, no matter what area that you're in or what event you are or what situation. You're always the same person. You know what I mean? Like, you don't change. No. You're just, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of people, because they might be at an event, they kind of change a little bit. Right. Or they might, you're always the same Tony V in every atmosphere. Right. You know what I mean?
I'm taking that as a compliment. And it's,
I'm not good at words, but...
And it's who I am. Yeah. You know what I mean? Except around my wife.
You try to be better.
I try to be a better person around my wife.
Yeah. And then one thing
doesn't work, but I try.
She married you anyway.
Yeah, honey, I love you, and I try.
And like you probably don't even know this. This is the thing with Tony, right? You probably don't even remember this, but I'm gonna say this on a podcast because we don't have you, for too long, so I want to get everything out. But I remember one time I got a call. From a casting agency, and they said, "Hey, we have this part that we want for you to come audition for.
Right.
And we want to have you come tomorrow. Tony V referred you."
Yeah.
And I said, "Are you shitting me?" Like,
I didn't know Tony knew my name. I didn't know Tony knew who the hell I was.
I said, it just was the fact that the name, when something hits you spontaneously out of you just it was kind of like he did, but I didn't want to fuck up my shit.
Right. I
was like,
oh boy. right.
So you got to keep a level of composure.
Right. Oh, I understand.
Right.
Yes.
And then Tony V referred you. It was for a hosting part for that Detroit movie. Project.
Oh yeah.
Right. And you probably don't even remember this.
I remember.
You remember, right?
Yeah.
And then I went in, did best I could, whatever, but. It's like something like that for a comic that don't get a lot of those opportunities, and for someone to kind of Tony's experience and where he is to kind of
Tony's been in
think of a guy,
dozens of movies at this point,
and just be like, "Hey, reach out to this guy."
But this is what we were hitting at earlier. Why I go out and I see shows and I try to know what's coming up behind me or what's going on in the world today, and not just be crazy old Tony the hermit lives on Monument Ave. Get off my stage, you kids. Because when somebody calls me and they go, hey, we need a funny African American performer who can do X, Y, and Z, 8 people come to my head,
sure.
And then 3 I go, oh, they should be able to handle this.
Yeah.
It's the same if they go, well, we need a woman, who's under 5 feet and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, these are this 6 people, and these 2 can do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And look, it's taken, this is going to sound more humble than I mean it to be.
Right.
But it's taken nothing away from me. They're not looking for me. If they go, look, Tony, we need you and 4 people who act like you, I go, I don't know anybody else.
I'll do all 4 parts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, there's nobody. No, you don't want to see anybody but me. Mm-hmm. Believe me, that's. But if they're looking for a certain, group of people, they come to me, especially when it's comics, because they know that I keep my ear to the ground to see what's going on, and would never send them someone who I didn't think could do the job.
Right.
I won't waste anybody's time.
Yeah.
Because as I just said about stage time, audition time and movie parts are precious.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste anybody's time. You want to be right for the thing. And then you get people going, well, why'd you send me that guy? It was completely wrong.
Yeah.
I
I didn't get the part, Tony. I'm sorry.
Of course.
But you got the shot.
But you got the shot,
Yeah.
and they know who you are. This
Yeah.
is the thing. That's a percentage game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You look. It comes down to this. There's so many things outside of your control that go into that decision. All you can do is the best you can do when you show up.
Sure.
It's like bringing your notes on stage. Just be prepared. There's nothing else you can do about. You could have been too tall. You could have been too light. You could have been too dark.
Sure.
You could have.
That'll never happen, Mike. Let's not work Birkenstock stocks or something.
He's got to stand next to this guy, and this guy's 6'1", and the height difference will hurt. There's so many things.
So many, right?
I one time read for a sitcom, and I got to network on it. There's 4, 5, 6 auditions to get to just before you get the part.
Ugh.
And they call me and they go, Tony, they really like you, but you're not getting the part. And I go, okay. And that's how I am. I go, fine. They go, do you want to know why? And I go, I have a feeling you're going to tell me, but I don't really care because it's not going to change anything.
It's not going to change the outcome.
It's not
get you the
change.
part, yeah.
It's not going to change. Right. If I listen to you, they're going to give me the part? No. So,
They don't want you to be so Tony. It's
they literally said, you were too big. You were the height differential between you and the lead was too much, and it would have been too intimidating looking. And I go, I can't do anything about that.
Do you get frustrated
I'm
when
gonna cut my feet off, so I'll be back next week.
No.
Do you get frustrated when stuff like that it goes into the variables of deciding someone's?
Early on, you do because you think you can control it somehow. I'll squat. I'll wear the lower shoes. But it's just so ridiculous. I had other auditions where people would come back and go, "Look, you just scared the shit out of that woman." And I go, what did I? There was the scene. She goes, yeah, but she was really afraid. I go, well, I'm that good.
I'm doing my job.
Yeah, right. She goes, no, she's afraid of you. And I go, well, I can't do anything about that either. I was doing what you told me to do.
She was actually afraid.
She was actually afraid.
So you would say you have a pretty relaxed approach to this job.
You have to have a relax. You have to be driven, but you can't let the shit that you can't control bother you because you can't control it.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a recipe for success in life, I feel like.
Best thing I ever heard, they go, the business isn't fair, but. There's no but. You know what I mean? There's no but. The business isn't fair. And once you learn that, it's like, you're your own product. So it's like someone coming back going like, look, I tried this on and this really isn't the color for me.
Yeah.
I got to give it back. And once you can separate yourself from you as the product, your life becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as I say, it's not like you don't piss it away or try it or throw everything against the wall you can, but you got to realize what's in your control and what's not in your control.
Yeah. So we've been doing this about an hour, and there's no way I'm going to let you get out of here without telling us a great story from back in the day. I don't know if you guys... So you were talking about how you guys were busting chops for guys coming up from New York. Did you guys go down to New York and raise hell down there? Any crazy stories from the road?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. We...
Oh, there you go.
Because I heard back in there's because with comedy, ideally, kind of like it's weird where comedy is right now in terms of when you was doing it. There was no podcasting.
It was just live. That was it.
Right. Now with podcasting, people who never went to a live stand-up show think because they listen to people talking about comedy,
they know what it's like.
They know what it is.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is like the club in New York. You were saying like if you would go down to New York. There's this thing where I guess like Barry Katz, he owned a club,
the Boston Comedy Club. Yeah, it was a place called the Paper Moon before that. That was run by Eddie Brill, and I was the first comic outside of New York that ever worked there.
He was the guy that booked for a time for Letterman.
Letterman for a long time.
Yeah,
Dear old friend of mine.
Yeah,
Eddie, and he had it as the Paper Moon, and then it became the Boston Comedy Club, and we used to work there all the time.
I heard from his mouth on his podcast, Barry Katz. He said specifically why he opened that club so he can actually bring Boston guys down there.
Yes.
So how did that relationship with New York comics and Boston comics? Was there any that?
Because there was such animosity. We had a hard time breaking into the clubs down there. So the fact that somebody opened a club that we could work at and get our foot in the door, made it easier. And then, as I said, I did my time. I was the house MC at Cat's Rising Star for about 2.5 years when it was up on First Ave.
So you did this in New York? No.
Oh yeah. I had an apartment on First Avenue and 9th Street for a long time.
Randy's from New York originally.
I was down in
well before it was nice.
Oh, well,
First Avenue and 9th now it's like a fucking $4 million
it was the
property.
Lower East Side before it was the East Village. Right. I used to tell people this all the time. We lived above a bodega. We had it was a one-room thing, and people like Eddie Brill and Dennis Leary, and Frank Santarelli all came. We all were there at some point. We had like a place just to flop when we went to New York.
Wow,
and it was like a Winnebago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like it would never get Randy. Honestly, like we're at a different time with comedy because I started like 6 years ago. Randy started like
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago.
Yeah. And
we both came from we started in our 30s, so we started a little later. We came from like a finance background.
Had a whole separate career.
We had a separate career from this.
Right.
So even though we understand like business, which we apply to our career now,
right?
I feel like it would never even come close to the era where you came from.
Because you guys camaraderie around that,
right? And it can't because it's become a business.
Yeah.
We were making a business. We didn't know what the hell we were doing.
It was so pure.
It was pure. It was, and we weren't looking to the future. We weren't looking for the for the sitcom or the movie. We were just making people laugh, and until people started, until they found Stephen Wright, and then they got Goldthwait, and we could see what could be done of it. That's when it started breaking up. Then everybody had like, I'm going to go take my shot. I'm next. I should be this. Blah blah blah. And that did happen.
Sure.
To a point. You
guys really set the
you
platform.
Understand, there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was nothing here outside of New York and L.A.
Yeah.
and maybe San Francisco. In the late 70s and stuff like that. There were no comedy clubs. They didn't exist. Boston started that.
Yeah.
That every town. And then eventually we had I'm going to say close to 200 comedians living here.
Holy shit.
That came from other parts of the town because we were making a living. You could go out in a week and make $1,500, $2,000.
Fuck, back then?
Jesus. Then, yeah. Yeah.
That's good money now.
Yeah. That's doing 5 or 6 shows or, multiple shows in a week. But and it hasn't gotten much better than that. You know what I mean? Except as you race through the ranks. Yeah. But that's about what it stayed. But there was nothing like that before.
So interesting. It was so pure in its essence, like you couldn't even understand where it was going to go.
There was no place for it to go. This is where it went. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to have audiences that we made people laugh at.
So who are the so after the shows, you're saying a big part of it is the hangout afterward, or being funny on stage, being funny off stage. That's important. Be able to keep up with the guys. After the shows, who was because obviously everyone has a different persona, different act on stage. But who amongst you guys hanging out was the biggest cut up? Was the craziest?
Kenny Rogerson, by far,
okay,
is the most naturally gifted, funny person I have ever met in my entire life.
Wow.
When I'm with him, I hurt from laughing.
Okay.
And he's got the unique ability that something comes out of his mouth funny, and that's the way it stays.
I thought you were going to say...
There's no tweaking. There's no nothing.
He just talks.
He just talks, and it's just hysterical.
It's hysterical.
Yeah. He's always made me laugh. Lenny Clark has always made me laugh. And if anyone ever heard our conversations, in private,
you think you were enemies?
We would all be arrested.
Can I just say something? I want to ask you something real quickly. Because I listen to podcasts.
I gotta go. By the way,
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, we gotta get.
I gotta go food shopping.
No, we gotta wrap this up. A couple minutes. But I just want to say how
I'm having a ball. By the way,
No, I know we gotta listen.
We'll talk to you for 3 more hours.
Yeah, this is we appreciate any time that you give us.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap this up. But I just want to say a lot of comics back then, like the Rogans, the Burrs,
Yeah.
they always say Gavin was
he was the guy.
right.
Yeah.
Don Gavin. Yeah.
And still to this day,
Yeah.
on stage, I don't want to. Not a lot of people I don't want to follow.
Yeah.
He's one of them.
What was your thing on Patrice? Just real quickly, I just want to get your
About Patrice?
Yeah. What was it like? What was
Patrice never met a time on stage that he didn't want to go over.
And we'll leave it with that, right, Randy?
There you go. Right?
A funny. Can I tell you what you want?
Please.
You want one funny Patrice story?
Yes.
He had gone on to. He started as a doorman at the Comedy Connection, was at Faneuil Hall, and the same way we brought him along, and he knew he was gonna, his path laid somewhere else. So he went to New York, and then he was sort of big in England he was working in London and blah blah blah. So I hadn't seen him in probably 8 or 9 months, and in the meantime, he'd become friends with Bill Burr and his peer group at the time.
Yeah.
He was coming back to do a gig, and they asked me if I would pick him up to take him to this gig. We were working together.
Okay.
And I go, yeah, sure. And I hadn't seen him. So he calls me. He goes, Tony, it's Patrice, blah, blah, blah. We catch up. He goes, they tell me you're going to give me a ride to the gig. I really appreciate it. He was very nice and stuff. I go, oh, wait, you didn't hear? He goes, what? I go, since you've been gone, I've become a racist. There's no way in hell I'm putting you in my car. And then there's silence on the phone for about 10 seconds. He goes, you are the biggest fucking asshole I have ever met in my life. And I go, I'll see you at 6. I also rode in a small plane with Patrice from Boston to Burlington, Vermont, where he sat white-knuckled in the back of like a twin-engine plane, holding the sides
To balance the plane.
because he thought he was keeping the plane straight. Because I don't think he'd ever flown commercial at the time, let alone been in a Buddy Holly killer.
Fucking shoehorned him in the plane.
I'm talking white-knuckled, man. I've never seen a larger man so scared in my life.
Tony, man, you know what? I hope you write a book at some point.
I know. Book's well overdue.
Hopefully there's a memoir. We appreciate you coming.
I'm sorry. I got to go feed the
Thank
meter.
you so much
This
for your
was
time.
a great conversation. Thanks for having me.
love having you. And thanks so much for everything you do for myself, chasing all the other comics in town. That's it for this episode, guys.
Yes.
Catch us next week. For Tony V, Randy Valera, and Chase Abel, we're out. Peace.
Podcast, you fucking bitch, and fuck you, Marty.